Hello developers, welcome to our channel. My name is Harish Kumar. In PHP 8.1, we have a new feature that is enumerations. An enumeration, or an enum for short, is an enumerated type that has a fixed number of possible values. For example, let's say we have a post class and it has a property status and its possible values are draft, in review or published. So here we use enum, which means specifically listed values. So in this video we will see what is PHP enum in PHP version 8.1 and how we can use it in the Laravel application. So before moving ahead, if you are new to this channel, please hit the red subscribe button and press bell icon so when I upload new videos you get notified. For this tutorial, I have already prepared a Laravel application, and in this application I have already created a post model, and here is the post controller. In this index method we have displayed a list of posts, and create method is for to display a form to create a new post, and in this store method we have stored the new post in the database. And in the browser you can see here we have list of posts. Here we have post titles, and you can also see that the post has status property as well, which has possible values published, draft and in review. So how we used to handle this before PHP enum feature? Let's see. Some developers used to create constants in the model class. For example, in the post model, here let's create a constant variable public const draft status is equal to draft, and similarly published status is equal to published. It is not bad, but I think it is better to create dedicated class for these constants. So let's remove this, and I have already prepared a post status class, this one, and here I have defined all the constants related to post status property, and we use these constants throughout the code. For example, if you want to use those, you could do something like this in the post controller. Let's dump this here, post status colon draft, and make sure to import this class, this one. And now if we go to browser and refresh, it will give us the string value of this constant. This is not a bad approach. It is certainly better than hard coding such values that don't really change and remain static. This is good enough, but this does not really help well with the type hinting. Let's see what I mean. So in the post controller, let's remove this, and here in this index method, here I am using post service class, and this post service class has a static method all to fetch all posts. Let's see this. So here is the post service class, and here we have static method all, and it simply returns all the latest posts. So let's say here we want to fetch only published posts. So what here we will do? First, here in this all static method, here I'll pass post status published. Now let's go to this method, and here it is going to accept $status. So here if I dump this status, and let's go to browser, refresh, and you will see that we get published string. So here we will type hint this as a string because we know that the type of the status is a string. And next here we will say where status is $status. Now let's remove this and go to browser, refresh, and here we get all the published post. Now the problem with this constant is that we are only able to type in the type of scalar value, that is a string in this case, because the post status constants we have, these are the strings. If these were the integer values, then we would type in this as int. So the problem is that it does not really guarantee that the provided value is one of these constants from the post status. It could be any string. For example, here if I pass any random string, this would still work. So if we refresh the page, of course we are not going to get any post, but our code still works. We are able to pass any other string. Because of this, we usually add some additional logic to ensure that the passed in value is really a valid constant value. If not, we might throw an exception. Let's see how it looks. So first, in the post status class, here I will add a static method. Let's say it is public static function all, and it will return an array of these possible values, or you can say all these constants. So here I'll say return an array, and then here I'll say self draft in review and published. Next, in the post service class, here I will add a if condition. If in array, and here I'll pass $status, and next post status all. So if this status is not in this post status all, then here we will throw an exception. So throw new exception. Let's say exception message is invalid status value. Now in the browser, if I refresh, and here we get exception invalid status value, because in the post controller, here we have passed random string which is not in the post status constants. So now if I pass post status in review, now it should work. Let's see, refresh, and here we go, we get the all post which has status in review. Well, this is not bad, and actually good approach and better approach than hard coding things around. But this additional logic would occur in multiple places where these constants are accepted. The another problem is that in the browser, here the status label is in_review. Here you may not want to display the text like this, and you may want to display something else instead of this text. For better example, let's say in the post status class, here these constant values are string, but sometimes developers choose integer value instead of strings. For example, let's say this draft is a 0 and in review is a 1 and published is a 2. Now let's regenerate the post data. So in the terminal, PHP artisan migrate fresh and also seed the data. It's done. Now in the browser, refresh. This time you will see it has displayed the number for the status instead of proper text. So here again you need additional logic to display proper text. So for these kind of problems, Enum comes to rescue, which provides a better handling for this. Now let's try the new Enum feature. Enums are kind of regular class. So to create Enum class, here instead of this class we use Enum keyword like this. Enum class can have constant variables, so these variables are valid. But for fixed set of possible values, we can define something called cases instead of using constants this way. So let's comment all of these for now. And now let's define cases. So the syntax goes like this: case followed by the name of case, that is draft in our case, and then semicolon. Similarly in review and published. As you may have noticed, these cases by default have no scalar values like we have for these constants. We will talk about the scalar values in a few moments. Here each case is an object of enum class itself. So in this case, these cases are basically object of the post status enum class. To verify this, let's go to the post controller. Here my editor is showing me error. So for now let's comment this and let's write down post status : draft. And now let's go to browser, refresh, and here you can see it is an object of post status and it has a property name which is the name of the case, that is draft in this case. So this kind of case which does not have scalar value is called pure case, and the enum class which has pure cases is called pure enum. So right now this post status is a pure enum. We can assign some values to these cases the same way we have assigned values to these constants. So we could do case draft is equal to 0, in a review is equal to 1, and published is equal to 2. Now this case becomes a backed case, and an enum class with all backed cases is called backed enum. Now you can also notice that the editor is showing error for these cases. That is because it is important to actually make this enum be a backed enum. We need to type hint this enum class with the data type of the scalar value of this case. In this case, we are using integer. We need to type hint this as int, like this. So now our enum class has backed cases. So the post status enum class is backed enum. And remember that enum class type can only be integer or string. We cannot type hint it as an array or object or any other class. It can only int or string. We can also cannot type hint as union type, so we cannot do int or string or something like that. It has to be either int or string. If I type it as string, now my editor showing me an error. Enum case type int does not match enum backing type string. So I will revert back to int. Because the enum class can only either be integer or string, so we cannot have a mix of backed and pure cases. For example, if I remove value of this draft, this is not going to work. Case draft or backed enum post status must have a value. So this means that either all cases have to be backed or all of them to be pure. And also the value of these cases must be unique. So if two cases have the same value, it will throw an error. So here if I say in a review is equal to 0, now you can notice editor is showing error message, duplicate value in enum for case, draft and in review. So we have to have unique values. Now how do we actually access these values? So let's go to the post controller. Here we have already diagrammed the post status draft. So let's go to browser and refresh. this time you can see we have two properties for this object. One is name, which is the name of the case, and second is the value, which is the scalar value of the backed case. So for pure case, we have only one property, that is name, and for backed case, we have two properties, that is name and value. So here, to get its value, we can say value like this. Now let's go to browser, refresh. Here we get the value 0. So if I type here post status in review and then its value, now let's see its value in the browser, refresh, it is 1. Now let's fix this implementation. So uncomment this, and you can see it is showing an error because this all method accepts status as string. But we have seen in this DD, this post status in review is an object. Because we are working with objects instead of scalar value constants, we can actually add post status type hinting where these enum cases are accepted, which is one of the main benefits of using enums. So in the post status, here instead of type hinting it as a string, we can actually type hint as post status like this. Now we do not need this condition because we are now type hinting, so we know for sure that the passed in value is an object of post status. So we know it is a valid status. So we can get rid of this. Now let's go to the browser, refresh, we get 1 because I forgot to remove the die dump from the controller. Let's remove this and now go back to browser, refresh, and here the error gone and we have fetched the in review posts. Now let's go to the editor, and now if I die dump this status and refresh, here you can see it is an object. Because here I am in the Laravel application, so behind the scene Laravel has automatically detected that this status is an enum class, so it has automatically get the status's value. But if you are working on core PHP or any other framework, when you are making a database query, that time you may get fatal error if you pass an object. So you have to pass the scalar value, so you can say status and then access the value like this. So now in the browser, refresh, it works. Now in the statuses you can see it is displaying the integer value, which is the raw value saved in the database. This is not user friendly, right? For better user experience, we would display some user friendly text. So in the editor, let's open our view file, index.blade.php, and scroll down. Right here we have displayed the raw status value. So to display user friendly text, first we need to able to get the post status object from the raw status value. So if the value is 2, then we want to get the object of published case. If the value is 1, then we want the object of in review case, and so on. So the backed enum provides two methods. One is the from and second is tryFrom. Both of these methods accept scalar value as an argument and returns an enum case if found. Let's see this. So in the controller, so here let's die dump post status from, let's pass the scalar value for draft 0. Now let's go to browser and refresh. Here we get object of post status for case draft. Similarly, if I pass the 1, which is the value for in review, So 1, let's go to browser and we get in review case. Similarly from 2 we will get object for published. Now if I pass any another number which is not present in the post status enum, then it will throw an exception. Let's try 3, which is not present here. So let's go to browser, refresh, and here we get exception. 3 is not a valid backing value for enum post status. Now if I try the second method, tryFrom, which is also same, it accepts the scalar value and returns the enum case if found, but it does not give exception if it does not found in the enum class. Let's see, refresh, and here we get null because this 3 scalar value is not present in the post status. But if I pass 2, then here refresh, and here we get the published status. So let's comment this. Now let's refresh. So now in the view, first we will try to get the post status object from this raw value. So here we can say app enums and then post status and then colon. Here I will use tryFrom because it will not throw an exception if it does not find case in the post status. And then here I will pass the raw value post status. It will still not work because it will try to print the object of the found case. Let's see. And here we get the error argument 1 string must be type of string. Post status object is given. So here we need to call some kind of method, something like text or let's say label, which will give us the user friendly text to display for the proper case. So we will create the label method in the post status class because we no longer need this. So let's remove this commented code and let's create method public function label. Now from here if I return any string, it will print that right here. Of course we do not want that. Instead we want to display proper text for these cases. So for that, first let's dump $this, and if we refresh, it will give us the post status which is in review. Enum class also allow us object comparison. So what I mean here, if I assign a case to a variable, so let's say $case1 is equal to post status draft and case2 is also post status draft, and now let's dump $case1 is triple equal to $case2. Now in the browser, refresh, here it is true because both cases are the same. But if I say post status in review, now in the browser, refresh, and now it is false because both are different. As we have seen, this keyword is an object. So here if we will check, this is triple equal to post status in review true, then it will return the in review text. For that you can use any condition you prefer. You can use if condition or switch. For now here I am going to use a new PHP syntax, that is match. So here I will say return match $this if the value is self draft. In that case it should return draft. If it is in a review, then it should return in review, and if it is published, then it should return published. Now if we go to browser, refresh, and now here we get the proper label for the status. go to the post controller, and if I pass here post status draft and refresh, now we get the draft, and if I pass published, we will get all the published posts here. Then you can add another method, for example, let's say color, similar like that. Here we will return this and here we will return the CSS class which will display the proper color for draft case. Because here I am using the Tailwind CSS, so here I will return Tailwind CSS class. So first let's go to the index blade file, and here I am going to copy these two CSS class, and now let's say color for draft is yellow 100 and text color is yellow 800. And similarly for in review, here let's say that is red, and for published I will say it is green. And now in the blade index file, here we will say, and let's copy this and print it here, and now instead of label here we will call method color. Now let's go to browser, refresh, and now you can see it is in the green color. Similarly in the post controller, let's get the draft post and refresh. Now we have draft in yellow colors, and let's fetch the in review, refresh, this is in the red color. Because I am working in the Laravel application and Laravel provides casting for enums out of the box, so we do not have to get the case object using tryFrom method like we have implemented right here. So instead in the post model, here we can say protected $cast is equal to status is equal to array, and it has status which is going to cast in the post status class like this. Now in the index blade file, we do not have to use tryFrom method. Instead we can say post status label like this. Similarly for the color, we can remove this and we can call post status color and refresh, and we get the same result. To prove this is an object, let's try dump post status, and in the browser you can see it is object of post status. Now let's remove this, refresh, and everything is working. Because in the post model we have added a casting for the post status, so if we try to create a new post using Laravel eloquent feature with any random value of status, it will throw an error. Let's see this. So in the post controller, let's remove this. So let's say post create, and then let's pass an array, and it has title is equal to test and status is any random value, let's say 23, which is not present in the post status cases. So now let's go to browser, refresh, and here we get error. 23 is not a valid backing value for enum post status. Now let's pass 1, which is interview case. Now let's go back to browser, refresh, and this time it has created a test post which has status in review. Enum class also provide one more useful method, that is cases, which returns all the cases object. Let's see this as well. So let's type dump post status cases in the browser, refresh, and we get array of 3 objects One is the draft, second is the in review, and third one is the published. So where we can use this feature? Let's remove this. So let's say in the create post, right now we have only one input field, title, for this simple example. Now let's say in this form you also want to display a drop down for status to save the status of the post as well. So let's implement this. So in the post create.blade.php, here we have input field for title. Let's duplicate this, and here I am going to add class margin top 4, and here it is status, and we do not need input field, so let's comment this, and here I'll add select. It has id, status, and class is equal to, let's copy this one. Next here it is status, and the name is also status. And to display validation error, here we will pass status. Next here we will say options, how we can add all the options for these cases. For that we will use enum method cases. So here I'll add for each loop, and here I'll say app enum post status cases and as status, and then this option tag right here, and now here we will display $status label, and its value is $status value, like this. Now let's go to browser, undefined constant cases. Okay, mistake is right here, it is not a constant, it is a method cases. Refresh, and here we have drop down. How cool is that? Now in the post controller, here we can add another value, request status. Now let's create a new post, post 1, and select in review, submit, and here we have post 1 in review. Create a post. Now let's suppose from the inspect element, if I change the value of in review to something else, let's say 33, which is not a case in the post status enum. Now this time if I select in review and now if I submit, we should get an error. 33 is not valid backing value for enum. So how we can avoid this error? We can fix this error by adding validation before creating this post. So in the store post request, here we will add a validation for status. So here we can say status is equal to, first thing it is required, and then we can say new enum, and then we will pass enum class post, that is post status class, and make sure to import this enum right here, this one. So now in the browser, let's refresh, and right here let's say go to inspect tool, and now change its value to 33. Let's close this and select in review and save. Now you can see that we get the validation message, the selected status is invalid. Now the request only accepts enums backed values. Enums behave similar to classes when they are used with the functions that supports inspecting classes and objects. For example, getType is a is object and getClass methods. These functions behave the same for enums the same as it behaves for the regular class. I think I have covered all the features of the enums. Now let's see what is the difference between the regular class and enums. The very first difference is the obviously syntax. We use class and then the class name. For enum we use enum keyword and the name of the enum. Second, in the classes we can define properties, but enums we cannot define properties. What I mean, in the class you can define class and then class name, and then it can has property public string test, which is valid for regular classes but invalid for enums. That is not allowed. In the enums we can create methods and static methods like regular classes, and we can initialize classes like new class name, but we cannot initialize enums like this. Regular classes and enums both can have interfaces, and a class has an inheritance feature but enum does not have. So we can extend regular classes but we cannot extend enum. Both supports trait, but the traits for enum cannot have properties. For example, let's say this post status uses example trait. So use example trait. Now let's create this trait, example trait.php, trait, example trait. This is valid. We can add as many methods and static methods as you want. It will work, but we cannot define properties like public string $test. This is not allowed in the trait which is used by the enum class. So now let's go to browser and let's go to posts. Now you can see that enum post status may not include properties that is defined in this trait right here. So if I remove this and refresh, it will work. It is valid. In the enums, some of the magic methods are not allowed. For example, in the enums we cannot use get, set, construct, destruct, clone, sleep magic methods. Some of the magic constants are allowed, like we can use : class, underscore class, function and method. These one. This is all in this lesson. I hope it was useful and you have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button, share this video and don't forget to subscribe us. See you in the next lesson.